Welcome to Youth Can Change the World. I'm your host, Nathan Bynum. This month, we have the opportunity to interview playwrights and actors from an original Yorktown high school play, Voices Out of Chaos. If you'd like to see the play in its entirety, check out our last episode. You won't regret it. I was impressed to hear the play has advanced to the state level in competition for the best high school original play. Without further ado, let's meet the playwrights and actors. So welcome everyone to Youth Can Change the World, and thank you for writing Voices Out of Chaos. It was an amazing play.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So I was wondering if one of you could describe the process of writing Voices Out of Chaos.
Well, that started this year. It actually started the first day of school. We walked in and, well, the thing that is known for the Theater 3s and 4s is that they have a play that they put on for the fall show. And it's known to be a script we follow. But this year, Cadby sat us down the first day of school, not just like oh, how was your break? How was this? She was like, so I was thinking over the summer, and it was known to be kind of a hectic summer full of news after
I think I noticed some
article.
of that.
Yeah. And so she sat us down and she told us how she couldn't really pick a play for us to put on in the fall, and that she wanted to try a devised piece, which is where you pull a bunch of written components from students or anyone really, and put on kind of a collage of a play that has a coherent story. And so she really just wanted us to first write pieces that we were passionate about, or passion pieces. And so really relating to the news or something that was happening in our lives that moment. And so we all went home the first week, I think it was.
Yeah, we had
that was our
discussions
first
in
assignment.
class, and then we went home and we all
By the next Monday,
wrote-
everyone was supposed to have a 2 to 3 minute piece. It was a very quick turnaround.
And that it seemed pressurizing, but the thing about a passion piece is that you gotta find that kind of a little pit in your soul, or just something that makes you tick, and kind of work off of that.
Right.
And so we all went home and we came back with these various pieces.
Yeah.
And went from there.
Yeah.
And you were passionate about everything you wrote.
Yeah.
It shows in the play.
It didn't stop there though. We started with these solo pieces, and then that's where a little girl with newspapers that came by. I didn't know what I was passionate about, and I was like, I am passionate about playing I love just the mind of a child, but then I was very stressed out about trying to dig into the news, because as a teen in like this area, I felt like I wasn't as into it as other people. Like I just wasn't aware, and I wanted to, but I didn't know how. But physicality and little children, let's jump on them. And that's how that started.
Nice.
Yeah.
So do you want to describe the general plot of the play for the folks who still haven't seen it? Although I hope they do check it out.
Well, the show basically follows Camille, a young girl, and it's sort of her trying to navigate the crazy world around us with the political climate that we're in and the social climate that we're in. Her sort of trying to figure out what everything is and what's going on and how we can deal with it, or if we can deal with it, really. And the format of that is sort of seen through her hopping through these newspapers and seeing scenes from daily life, mostly in the perspective of teenagers. Yeah.
Which makes sense, because teenagers wrote the play.
Yeah. Cadby wanted us to write from our own perspectives, because there's just so much going on that, like, it's interesting to know what everybody else is thinking and how everyone's processing all of these different things.
Yeah, it really is no matter like what the show is or like how it is portrayed with the little girl, it really is just teen voices on what is happening today. So.
Yeah, and that's what I found very compelling about it as a viewer, because I'm confused and upset often by the news, and to see that reflected from people just, a little bit more early on in their awareness of the news was really powerful for me, because honestly, I'm just as confused a lot of the time. Probably not reassuring, but
Great.
but at the same time, it made it a really relatable play, and it sort of helped me see the challenges that it would be not only to be a 7-year-old like your character, but also to be a teenager at this point in time. Mm-hmm. So what I thought we'd do is check out some vignettes from the play, and then I'd like to hear what the inspiration was behind those vignettes, and we can talk about how it came to be what it is.
Just a minute, honey. I thought it a perfect game to play.
Hold on for a second. Camille, honey, Mommy has to make this very important phone call, okay?
But you said you'd play with me today.
I know. If you can't play by yourself, then... Here, practice your read. Yes. Sorry. Yeah, I know it.
The Washington Post? Mom, don't blame men. D-A-C-A. Las Vegas shooting. Can't touch the ground. Ow!
Can I call you right back? Camille? Camille, honey, are you okay?
Uh-huh.
What on earth are you doing?
I'm practicing my reading. I made it a game. I pick up the paper, and then I read. Mom, what's Charlotte though?
It's old news. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Then you pick up that one right here.
Democrats and Republicans are playing Russian roulette with the American people.
Now, we put it on the ground, and then we stomp. Ready?
And so we are introduced to Camille. So can you tell us the inspiration for that scene?
It really wasn't much of a, yes, I know exactly what I'm gonna do. It's gonna be this girl and like newspaper, it's gonna be awesome. No, it was literally more of me just kind of coming home really stressed about theater. And I was like, I don't know how to talk about something that I'm not really aware of. Like I'm not aware of the news. I felt really out of what was happening. And yeah, I really wanted to get closer to the news, and I tried to, through all the stress and the panic of just trying to create a thing I was passionate about to present to my fellow. What are you? Fellow thespian.
We're peers.
Peers, yes. I tried to remove myself from that setting, and I tried just to think about, okay, what do you know and what do you want to know? And so I knew that there were things happening that I didn't have a firm grasp on, and I also knew that my strengths as an actor, and well, some of them which were being a child, and so and physicality, those are two of my favorite things to do. So I was like, okay, I will show a way of almost like how I feel like these events that have happened in the near past have affected me, and the way that they've almost flew over my head. And so it started with a girl just wanting her mom to play with her. That's all she wanted. And when she wouldn't give her that satisfaction or validation, she turned to her imagination, which was actually the first setting was in a park. And there was...
So this is the setting that didn't actually happen?
No, this was the first time I ever presented in a little black box. And it was in a park, and there was all these newspapers that were trash because people had just thrown them away, like, I don't need this anymore, there's more news tomorrow. And she used these to kind of create hopscotch.
Right.
And through this, it caught the attention of her mom, who had a business call. And
that's still in the play.
That's still in the play. A lot of this is still here, but we just kind of morphed it into a coherent thing.
Yeah.
But that scene, the main thing that just kind of stayed throughout the play was how the mom just kind of wanted to protect her daughter.
Right.
And she was like, oh, don't worry about that. That's old news, even though it really happened last week. And it's already considered kind of trash at the moment, to just kind of help the child remain in her kind of safe space, which is like, oh, I know my mom, I know what I had for dinner tonight, which was macaroni and cheese, and my mom has been in a business call all day, but I can't wait for her to come home. That was the setting of that scene in the beginning.
Yeah, so it kind of sets up the struggle of trying to maintain innocence of this 7-year-old child in this crazy environment that we're in.
And what it morphed into was kind of an Alice in Wonderland effect of how her mind was creating little circumstances, or she was diving into her mind, and these scenes would just appear.
Yep.
And so with that, I'm sorry, I lost my little train of focus. What were we
So the
talking
scenes
about?
would just appear, and you were kind of the launch pad
Yeah.
into the rest of the play.
Yeah.
Because your imagination kind of gets intermingled with the news. And then you're transported into all these situations that you can't possibly understand as a 7-year-old girl.
And it's just kind of, at first, a 7-year-old would just think of it as a fun game. And once she realizes that people know something that she doesn't, she wants to figure out what that means. And she won't kind of stop until she gets a simple answer. And then she'll move on to the next thing. But she never finds that, so she wants to keep kind of tearing at that.
Because there are no simple answers.
No, and that was, as a writer, that's what I still find myself, like, everyone can, I feel, relate to this thing of, like, we all just want to find something, like, we want to simply just solve it, and we can't. And so I think that was a main thing in our show as well.
Yeah.
Well done. It definitely came across for me. What would you hope that the audience would have taken away from your performance?
From
that scene.
Really just the innocence of anyone. Or we start with such as a child, or just you really don't know what's happening until, like, an outside force comes in, I feel like. And once you become more aware, it can be for the better, but it can also be kind of overwhelming. It is overwhelming, but it's just there's a transformation, and however quick it happens, and you don't know when, or you don't know how, but the first scene just kind of shows her simple world and what the news can do to it.
I'm especially interested in, like, what would you say to parents who are in that situation, who do have some news filtering down to someone like Camille? And how do they protect their child versus having their child live in the world?
We had Q&As at the end of every show that we did, and a question that we saw at the end of every single show was, I noticed that you portrayed these parents as very neglectful or
Really?
like they, or
feel that way.
aggressive or something like that. And they wanted an answer. They wanted an explanation for that. And of course, that was never our intention. We were never thinking, let's write a piece about how we want to attack our parents because they suck. Like, it's not.
No.
We.
I don't know.
I think we wanted to get across the idea that the parents can't really do anything because they're doing their best, but it's impossible to have to give your child a true sense of stability when there really is no stability in their environment. And so
I felt great empathy for the parent
Yeah.
watching the play. I didn't think they were being a bad parent at all. I thought they were in an impossible situation.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation to be in. We actually had, this show has changed a lot. We had another section. We didn't originally have the women's
Sexual
issues
assault.
in there, and the sexual assault, and kind of like the bus stop scene and Mila's scene. We originally had a piece about, this was when we first started to develop this, it was when all the hurricanes were happening, and that was all over the news. And so a lot of people wrote pieces about climate change, what was happening with that. And I was actually in a scene where I was a little kid and my mom was reading the newspaper and I was asking her to read it to me. And she just kind of made up a story about how these land creatures like destroyed their planet for all like the birdies and the fishies. She explained it in like this way that I could understand.
Like the Lorax almost.
Yeah, it was basically like the Lorax, and it had a happy ending where the people went to a new planet, and I was like, well, what about the birdies and the fishies? Did they go there too? And she was like, yeah, they did. But
Right.
really, that's not how the story actually ends. So it's that was also in there a little bit more before our final show became. We cut that out, and we wanted to include with all the Me Too movement things that are being in the news lately. We wanted to
Absolutely.
include part of that, and we felt like people could relate to that more because the hurricanes were kind of like
More of a
covered
were
up.
done
Yeah,
talking
people.
about
Yeah,
it.
it's kind of.
They'll
a
happen
dead
again,
topic.
but they're out of the news cycle now.
If we were to continue this show, and like it would have to be all different because
Everything
we
had to
started
change.
we started performances in October, right? Yeah.
First show was
And
October.
so hurricanes, and that was the focus of the news. And the second that ended, the focus of the news shifted to women's rights.
No one
And
was talking about it anymore.
yeah, and so we found, we were like, okay, our show is about the constant changing of the news. We got to change it because of that. And
We had a long
with that,
discussion about
yeah.
that. We had a really long discussion
Yeah.
in class, and we kept debating, are we going to like do something about sexual assault, or are we just going to stick with what we have? And we knew that we would have to dedicate so much time to it, and we would kind of have to drop a month of our curriculum in order to totally rewrite a quarter of the show.
And yet you would get the experience of rewriting a show.
And so we decided we just had to. It had to be current, and it had to really touch as many people as we could.
Yeah.
So
That's really impressive that you not only wrote a show by stitching together things that were put together in less than a week, but were so passionate that people were able to do it because they cared about what they wrote about.
yeah.
And then you rewrote the show. It's really impressive. And not only did you touch on issues of the Me Too movement and sexual assault, you also touched on issues of race and race relations in a really, what I found to be a meaningful way. We now have a clip that you were involved with. And do you want to say a short intro to the clip? Then we'll watch it and then we'll talk more about that.
It's about this kid who's trying to go to his class, I guess, and he just sees a bunch of people in his school or some of his friends. When he talks to them, they're just gathering up and they're talking about like the incident that happened, and it's like there's this bombing somewhere, and the moment he kind of hears about that, he's like, because this type of scenario he has been before, and he knows that it's not gonna go his way, right? And because he is brown and he looks like someone who's from Middle East or someone from the area, or he's Muslim, and because of the stereotype.
The authorities investigating an attempted New York City bombing have said that the would-be suicide bomber, he was like gonna detonate his bomb he had strapped to his body. Oh, who was it?
Don't be Muslim. Don't be a Muslim, man, not again. Hey guys.
The suspect was identified as 27-year-old Akid Ullah. Oh, and he was taken to the hospital with wounds from the blast. There were 3 people nearby who were injured. So I think this guy was jihadi.
Why are you guys all looking at me? I get it, because he happened to be my uncle, right?
He was your uncle?
It was a joke, guys. I'm kidding. It's a joke.
That was a joke.
I think that's a joke.
Are you for real? Funny.
Honestly, that is the most insensitive thing that I've ever heard. That's
I'm
awful.
insensitive, and you guys are not insensitive to the fact that you're all looking at me? You're like, why are you backing away? Guys, this is like 2018. And you know what? Yeah, I get it. He happened to be Muslim doing crazy stuff, but like, how does that link with me? How does that link with me? Just because I happen to be brown and not white, you can link me with him? Really? Yo, like, there are about 1.8 billion Muslims. 1.8 billion. And yes, like a small percentage of them happen to be extremists. Just like small percentage of white people happen to be a school shooter and part of KKK and all that crap. See how that works? Not all brown people are terrorists, okay? And the funny part is, I'm not even a Muslim. That's right. So like, don't make assumptions, especially if you don't know me.
So Bibho, can you tell us about the inspiration for that scene?
Okay, so the inspiration for this is ever since coming here and going through elementary school, middle school, people would kind of like make if there is some sort of incident with 9/11 was brought up, people would kind of look at me, or there would just be joking like, oh, you're gonna bomb this school. I don't know, it's any certain scenario like, oh.
Because that was a joke to people to say that.
It's kind of like a joke, yeah, and sometimes kind of like that. I didn't like that. It didn't make sense to me because at that time, like to me, I'm not Muslim, so I felt like I was misstereotyped. It's just wrong to think like that, and I'm from like Nepal. I'm from a complete different place, and I mean, I would think about that. And as time went by, I started to kind of realize, because I had Muslim friends, I started making Muslim friends and connecting with them. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, wow. I mean, I really feel it. Like I started to feel what it kind of feels like and what they felt being Muslim, and because of the religion, but not only religion, but there's like culture. There's this cultural aspect of it, right?
Absolutely.
And when you demean that, and when you what's that word? I can't find the word. Help me out, guys.
Stereotype?
Stereotype, stereotype.
Generalize?
Generalize, yeah. It's like, what I grew up with as, my family, my culture, my people, like, they're not like human. They're not like, they don't deserve the respect, the right. You know what I mean?
That's the way that people see it.
Yeah, people, and I mean, if you make fun of that, and because like religion, culture, there's like so much thing that is like intertwined with it.
Absolutely.
But you start to question that, and then it's like, oh, this is my faith, my culture, is this who I am, is this it's a good thing, even though it makes sense to you. You feel like you don't, deserve to be part of this thing, and you don't feel welcomed.
Right.
And for me, I'm not a Muslim, but I really felt what that felt like, and I understood it. My teacher, her husband, he's Pakistani, and she talk about because she went to Pakistan, and she is like well connected with him, and she knows. She's by the way, she's white. So, but because of that, she kind of started to understand what it's like, going to airport and having to go through double, triple checkup because
right.
he's a Muslim, and I mean that applies to.
It's not coincidence.
Yeah. So, my teacher, she was talking about. She actually said, she was like, every time my husband, he's like listening to news and he hears there's some sort of terrorist attack or some sort of anything, shooting or whatever, he's like, don't be a Muslim. Then I was like, I need to add that. I need to do this. And I mean, also like something that I went through, even though it really doesn't necessarily represent me, but I mean, as like a brown guy, it does, but as a religiously no, but I thought that I had to like really speak out about that. I mean, still, because of like 9/11, you know, the 9/11 happened, people think it's over now, but it's still like, it's brought up and stereotypes and all that stuff. And
Yeah, it's not over for people
Yeah.
who are seen as Muslim.
yeah, and when I did the show, some of the people, they came up to me and they're like, oh, I don't think that happens, dude. I mean, that's a little bit like over the top. And then I'm like, well, because you've never been in this situation. So like, yeah, because you never had to go through it. So of course it looks over the top. But there were people who cried to me. They're like, thank you. Like, that has happened to me.
Yep.
And I didn't expect that. I didn't know that was going to happen. but like, it did. And
Yeah. How did you feel when you generated that level of connection with the audience?
I mean, representing people and really kind of bringing them, because, you know, people don't like to speak up, like, especially minorities. Minorities, it's hard for us to speak up, because when you're suppressed and when you are a small group of people and you don't know if people will take you seriously. And so I got to do that, and I mean, it felt great, of course, like, you know, being part of that, speaking up for people, and being, you know, they come up to you and they talk to you, and then they're like,
You hit it spot on.
yeah,
Well done.
yeah, so that's good. Thanks.
We were also talking about your piece, which was also an experience that a lot of people have, unfortunately, way too many people.
Yes.
Again. So let's watch this piece, and then we'll talk about it.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna go outside. I need some fresh air. Hey, Ryan, do you want to go get drinks with us?
Sure.
What do you want?
I don't know. But hey, you're cute. Wanna have some fun?
No, thank you.
Come on.
No, please,
Come
I'm
on.
really not interested.
I know you want to.
No, I'm
You
trying
want
honestly.
to.
Please stop. Let
Don't
go.
move!
Stop it!
Stop!
Get off of me!
Slut!
I can't believe what just happened.
Let's just go back and
This guy.
What? What guy? I didn't see any guy. What are you talking about?
I have to go.
Okay.
I have to go.
See you tomorrow. Be safe.
Okay, so Mila, what was the inspiration behind that?
Too many times I have had conversations with friends and experienced this myself of people, mostly females, being taken advantage of, whether it's at a social event, at a party, or just out in public trying to walk around, trying to live their lives. And it's terrifying. It's horrible to not feel safe anywhere you go. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to show the perspective of not being able to get out exactly what is wrong, and not necessarily being able to speak out about it, but at the same time needing to explain that there is something very bad happening behind the curtain, and it needs to be discussed and it needs to be dealt with, but not having the power, not having the resources to get there.
Yeah.
And so I wrote a piece about someone getting groped at a school dance, and then that was combined with a piece, your piece, about getting...
I wrote a piece about a girl who is raped or assaulted or something happens, the audience doesn't necessarily know what happens at a frat party. She gets drugged. And I wrote it because it's a really scary thing to hear about in the news. And, you know, we're all going to be in college in 2 years or less. And it's a really, really scary thing to think about. And I just felt like it needed to be put out there. Right. And they kind of got combined with, like, her piece and my piece got combined to become this other thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and part of the power of theater is being able to say these things that are problems that I feel like, I don't know, but from my memory of high school, I feel like a lot of the times people aren't really talking about these things that are happening in the news as if it's something that could happen to anyone in the classroom. And obviously if it happens in the news, then it could, and it's scary, and we need to talk about it, just like you said.
Like, I mean, it's part of the theater is that you can talk about things and express, like, a lot of emotions and whatever and whatnot. But we happen to be fortunate because our theater teacher, Miss Cadby, she allowed us to, you know, express ourselves and speak up for these things. I mean, a lot of schools, I mean, let's be honest, this is like, the play that we did is very controversial, and people get offended by it. And I mean, when I was doing my piece, I felt uncomfortable. I felt like I was making people feel uncomfortable, and but you know, like the thing is that our theater environment is just happen to be so that it allows us to do this and just and you know, exercise our right to right of free speech, and that's really cool because you can't do this in most schools. You really can't. And I mean, this speaks a lot.
One thing adding on to that, something that Cadby would sometimes say is, you need to go there. And that's sort of the idea that this place should be very uncomfortable, and it should be very tense to watch, because these are issues that people don't speak openly about, and they need to be addressed. And so Caleb, who was my assaulter in that last scene, he and I were rehearsing, and Ms. Cadby was discussing with us our different perspectives on what was happening. And she kept saying, Caleb, you need to go there. And it's just, I think that makes it so much more powerful that we really were forced to sink into those perspectives and let them really get to us.
And he did. I mean, it was hard to listen to. I also would hope that the more you become uncomfortable talking about things that are important to you and make other people uncomfortable, the more comfortable maybe you can become in it. It's like you expand your comfort zone, because, to use this as an example, if as a male I get uncomfortable when people talk about sexual assaults of men to women, then how uncomfortable is it for a woman who that's happened to be silent about it? You know, because that's a discomfort that they have to live with all the time. It's only a discomfort that perhaps I may need to live with when I talk about it, or when they talk to me. So often the person who's on the receiving end of an oppressive behavior is the one made to feel uncomfortable about bringing it up, which is really wrong.
One of the main things that we wanted to get out of this was a conversation. We wanted to show people that listening is equally as important as talking. And if you just sit back and just kind of let these things happen, it will continue to happen, and you won't feel like you're gonna try and get over it. You're not gonna try and like solve it. You're just gonna let it happen and let it happen again. When we started writing this, we wanted hope. Well, that's what Cadby
Cadby
wanted
hope.
hope. She wanted to kind of see if we could kind of end it in a way that inspired the audience in a positive way.
And we all said that's not happening.
No,
Because
none of
that's
our
not what
voices
this
got
perspective
that.
is.
He wanted us to have a solution to all the problems, but we don't know, and that's what it's all about. We are questioning everything, and we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know what to do about all these things.
So we ended the piece with what's going to happen.
Yep.
We really don't know.
I really want to know myself, but I can't.
know.
I can't know, you know, because none of us can know.
And like, you know, like there are a lot of you, like when you watch news or when you like read stuff that's online and all the stuff that's happening around the world, or hear school shooting, or like women getting harassed and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you read it and it's like always out there, and then nowadays people, you know, they don't really, it's okay, it happens, gonna happen. You just let it pass by. I think when we did our show and when we wrote it and when we performed it, I mean, you know, in front of people and adding all the emotions and just being there. I think when people watch that, it's just not reading, it's not like reading the news. It's like they see the emotion of the people, so it hits you. And after you finish the show, everyone's silent. They don't know what to talk about. They don't know what to say, and for the long time, for the first time maybe, they've seen this in more of like humane way rather than just like reading news.
It's no longer words on a page. It's human beings
Yeah.
having experiences.
Yeah, it's shouting at them, this is what we're letting pass by.
Yeah.
It's really forced to think about it and not just let it go right over your head. Like a lot of things are just being overshadowed by bigger things. There's always something, there's always a new story out there.
Right.
And this really forced people to just sit there, because they can't just walk out the door, you know? They have to sit there and think about it and like live it with all of us.
And as an adolescent, I kind of, like I find myself realizing more and more the reality of this. Like, if you would have come up to me in the beginning of the year, I would have told you something completely different. I have learned so much from this experience and this show, and it's scary, it sucks, but I'm very happy that I'm learning it, and I'm coming to terms when I am.
Yep.
Yeah, and also like being involved with it, because like all of these issues that we brought up in our show, I mean, I was kind of aware of it because, you know, like people talk about it, but I wasn't like there. And I think when you start to think about it, because we had to think about it a lot because you're doing the show, and then it hits you, this is an issue that we need to work on. It's just not just like the thing that you need to let go of it, just let go of it. No, you have to like really bring it up and have a conversation and do something about it. But in order to do that, you need to like talk and involve yourself. And I think this bringing in emotion and really doing this, it really put us in a different perspective and allowed us to see it in more of an empathetic way. And
You need to be in that uncomfortable place to solve these problems. So we have one more clip, and this sort of shows what it's like to be in a world where these things happen, and how it can create some paranoia, because rightfully so, there's things to be afraid of.
Jeez, it's cold out.
Yeah. Please leave me alone.
Train's always late. Why do they even have a schedule?
Stop talking about the train. It's weird. She's cute. What's a good conversation starter?
So, what you looking at?
Just texting a friend. That way someone will know I'm missing and call the police.
Oh, is that Fleetwood Mac? I love them.
Nice. Something in common.
Is he looking over my shoulder? Did he see my passcode? Is he still watching me? When is the train gonna get here? And why isn't Megan texting me back?
Say something, idiot. The train is gonna be here soon.
So that's a nice dress.
Thank you. I knew I shouldn't have worn this. They're gonna find it at the bottom of a river somewhere. Crap, I left my pepper spray at home. Such an idiot. Where is the damn train?
I'm Gus, by the way.
Quick, think of a name. Sarah. No. Ashley. No. Katie.
So, where you headed?
Cool. Keep it casual.
I know he's gonna follow me. What do I say? I'm just going home.
Long day now.
Yeah, probably my last.
Oh, that's mine. I guess.
Aw, drat! I should have gotten her number. She's probably out of my league anyway. She didn't seem that into me.
Okay, so Maria, tell us about the inspiration behind that scene.
Well, I didn't write it. The girl who played my subconscious in the scene, she wrote the piece. And we wanted to include it because it's kind of the opposite perspective of the other piece where it's like, this is like the guy's fault. And in this one, it's like, this is a result of what happens when all these things are happening in the news. And it was just a misunderstanding. The character in my scene wasn't trying to be creepy. He was just, trying to make a friend. And because of all the things that she's heard about, my character is very scared and very upset that he's trying to talk to her because she doesn't feel safe.
Right.
But also, like, he's more of a nervous character because you can see that between the interaction, and so it becomes apparent that because his intention doesn't become clear. It's not, you don't know what he wants, right? And he's kind of nervous. So that's kind of interesting to see that because that happens to a lot of guys, especially me.
Me too. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's really bad. And then your intention is probably something else, but because you're nervous, people assume that. Yeah. So
they think, oh, why is this guy
sketchy's
nervous? He
going
must
on.
be doing something sketchy.
Oh, yeah.
You have no way of knowing what
Right.
someone's intentions are.
Oh, yeah.
You just kind of have to be afraid of everybody.
Right. And I think this scene does a really good job of showing how harassment and assault is really all of our issue in a personal way, not just in a, oh, we don't want women to get assaulted, which we don't, but it's also because it messes up our communication and messes up our interactions, because the fact that that woman was so afraid, understandably so, winds up not only hurting her, but also hurting any man who wants to communicate with her in a non-negative way.
Yeah.
The last time we performed it at Yorktown, which was last Friday, it was Friday night, Laura and I, we were all doing kind of like these improv games to get into our characters and really be in that place, and we were interacting with each other as our characters in the improv setting, and Laura and I we didn't really know how to interact with people because it was basically just us kind of trying to avoid people during the improv. And so backstage we were talking before we came on, and we were trying to get into that place, and we were just talking about scary experiences that we've had or scary stories that we've been told to really get a hold of the emotions that the character's feeling in the scene. And I got a little bit flustered on stage that night because I was like I lost my 10% control. I was a little bit too into it, and I was like, whoo! I was like legitimately like a little bit scared. And I thought that was interesting that I could get to that place so quickly because all these things were happening.
That's impressive. I mean, it looked good. It looked like you were really afraid, which apparently you were.
Yes.
Yeah.
And 10% control is a concept that Ms. Cadby uses. She says that you should always be entirely in your character, and you should be entirely immersed in their circumstances and in their existence and how they are feeling in this moment. But you should always have just enough to control that you're able to pull yourself out if you need a second. That so you have your 10% control just so that you don't go crazy. She said if you lose 10% control, that's what people call insanity.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Because if you get too far into that place that you can't voluntarily leave and voluntarily remember, yes, it's okay, I'm just in this room, I'm with my friends, I'm entirely safe, I know and trust everyone around me. If you lose the ability to remember that, you can get into a really, really bad state.
That's an important lesson because it makes acting a sustainable either career choice or hobby or whatever you decide to make it for yourselves.
Yeah, and for me personally, like there are times when we do like personal piece or like if I did my personal piece when I did it, sometimes I would get too involved with it and I would just dwell within too much, and I would lose that control, and like for like the rest of the day, rest of the week, it would just like, it would be in your mind, and you just can't, because you just went in your emotion, and you just don't know how to get out of it.
Really
Yeah. When we were brainstorming about the women's issues section, and we were presenting our pieces about that, I didn't present mine in front of the class because I didn't want to be in that place where I was living that, and I was just not ready to go to that place because it was too scary. So I
did it.
So Mila did it.
Mila stepped in.
Yep.
Yeah, and Ms. Cadby said, okay, we're gonna run like our little draft of the sexual assault part, and I don't know which of these scenes I want to do, so Mila, we're going to do your scene, and then we're going to do Maria's scene. And then she like pulled me aside and she was like, you're doing both. And I was like,
What about the 10%, Miss Cadby?
I was like, what, am I going to do one and then we stop and do the other? And she was like, no, we're going to do one and then you go straight into the next. And I was like, so I'm going to get assaulted and then raped. And it was very, it was a lot. And, you know, I was doing this in front of my class, my theater class. And it was really intense because at that point, my piece was not me going off stage. I was just alone on stage experiencing being assaulted and begging for someone to stop. And then I was pushed to the ground, and he said, if you tell anyone, I'll kill you. And so that, of course, was a very emotional experience. And Ms. Cadby was directing me on like how to hold my body and how I was being, where I was being touched, what I was being, how I was being attacked. She pulled me aside and she said, I want the incident to happen to you. Are you okay with that? And I said, what do you mean? Because she hadn't said anything about an incident. And she said, I want you to be the one who is sexually assaulted. And I said, okay. And she said, are you okay with that? Is that okay? Will you be okay? And I said, uh-huh. And I walked away, and she gave me the script. And I looked it over. And I think that doing this was a really good control exercise for me. Because in Theater 1, I remember we had an exercise where I just lost all control, and I freaked out, and I started crying in front of the whole class. And this show really helped me to build up my control abilities.
You did an amazing job.
Thank you.
Really did. And thanks for being able to go through that in order to help people talk about such an important issue. So one last thing, we kind of started with you, Camille, and I kind of wanted to wrap up with you because in all these scenes, even the one we just watched, you see cutaway to Camille watching, the little 7-year-old eyes watching.
Yeah.
How do you feel that, like, how was that for you, and what were you hoping that would do for the audience?
Well, this girl, she's growing up as she's watching these. She's growing up really fast because she's being affected by these things. And at first she thinks of them as merely just little entertainment pieces, like with the political section that starts first. She's just like, oh, that's fun. They can't see me, but I can see them. I can do this. And then she realizes that they aren't just in her head and that they're actually real things. And so she starts to kind of almost step on eggshells. And as the show progresses, her mind just becomes more and more chaotic, hence Voices Out of Chaos. And until there's this moment at the end, which is the climax, where it just all breaks, and she realizes that there really is, like, this is her reality, that none of this is just in her head, and that but she doesn't really know how to explain it, so she goes on like this rampage of just questions. She wants to know, so she asks Maria, why are you scared of this boy, this guy? Because she can see both sides and no one else can. And she can plainly see that this guy just wants to talk to this girl, but she's nervous.
Yeah, because she can hear his subconscious.
And then she wants to know why this counselor in this other scene is just asking this boy so many questions. She wants to know why her Mila and her dad are arguing. She wants to know why people are scared of Bibho. And when no one's answering her, she loses this grasp of what she knows, and she realizes that she can't just get a simple answer out of everyone. And that's when it just kind of, she loses a part of herself, the last piece of innocence, or just the thing that she was holding on to, and she just realizes she doesn't know, and she's like, what's going to happen? And we leave it there for the audience to just kind of answer or just talk about it, and it's really a conversation starter when you think about it.
That's a good
It's a huge conversation starter.
Yeah. It's not just kind of a little card on a table you pick up for a weird little...
Very in-depth conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so hard to accept that there are no easy answers. I mean, she recognizes that, but rather than accept it, she kind of throws a tantrum of questions, which is a natural reaction.
And as we worked on this show, we worked on it for 6 months.
Yep.
And it was never the same. It always changed.
Wow.
Every day. The last show, we changed something, like the day of. Because they're like with any play or any piece of theater, you really don't have a final product because you're just finding new things, and you're discovering ways to develop it or dive into that character, find a new aspect of it. And through this, it's just I've seen a lot of different ways that this 7-year-old thinks, and I've seen it, which is weird. A 7-year-old thinks a lot of ways. Wow. But the play really wasn't about her. It was about the things that have been in her head and the newspapers. She was just kind of a way of showing it.
She was our vehicle.
Yeah, definitely.
We needed to find a way of connecting because we didn't know how to put this together. We were really scared that it wasn't going to be cohesive.
It was just gonna be awkward
and that it was going to be like
vignettes.
these like have you seen that SNL skit? That's like
Oh my God, we were all so
the high
scared of
school
the high
theater
school experimental
show,
theater.
I don't
and it's
think I've seen
really
that.
it's just making
Watch
fun
it.
of like high schoolers. Watch
they're
it.
so
It's so
awkward.
funny.
That's what we all thought it
And
was
we
going to
thought
be.
that's what it was going to be, but then we had Camille, and she connected it all.
Yeah,
It was great.
it was a great story device, and it worked so well. And
Yeah.
in the end, when she asked that question, we're all right there with you. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Well, I want to thank you all for being here on the show.
Thank you so much for having us.
And I learned a ton, and I think it just speaks to you all as actors that the final result, well, it's not a final result, as you just said, but the one that we happen to capture on video is really amazing. And I guess it's that 90% of not being in control that makes the play different every time. Will you be performing it again?
No.
This is it.
Last Saturday was our final performance.
This
Wow.
interview is kind of our wrap-up.
A little bit, yeah.
Bittersweet.
I bet. Well, if you want to share that one version of it with anyone else, it'll be up on YouTube, and I'll share the links with you all.
Wonderful.
And you're also welcome to share this discussion, which I found to be really helpful and illuminating. And I feel like, despite the fact that I still don't know what's going to happen, I feel like I understand a little bit more about the way that you all are seeing this, and probably the way that many, many, many teens across the country are experiencing this. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We got our conversation.
There you go.
Yeah, you're right.
This is all we want.